Hi, you've recently had your modem or router changed, and now you can't see your existing cameras, the ones you have already had previously installed and were working fine until the modem was changed or router. So the screen should look like this. Blank. Yeah, that sucks. So there is a way to recover on an Amcrest NVR. You'll have to log in first. Let me go to the main screen. This one. And then we're going to log in. You're going to see this screen, and you're not logged in yet. So you're going to right click with your mouse. You're going to scroll down to where it says remote. And then click remote, and then you're going to see the login screen. So if you know your password, your login and name and password, please log in. Hit OK. And now you should see this screen. So let me explain what you're seeing on this screen. These cameras on top here are potential cameras that can be installed. The section down here are cameras that are installed. So you should see a bigger list down here than I do. This is a test machine, so I don't have them all installed right now. So what the important things to note right now are this column here is the IP addresses of the cameras. This one happens to be camera 6, which is the only one I have installed at the moment, which is not showing because the address here is incorrect for me also. So what you're going to do is everything in this column, the list, big list that you have, just this column, you're going to have to write down, note down, well, each camera individually. So write down this whole address. Yours may look different with a 1 instead of a 0. All the numbers will be slightly different. So just write down the ones that you have for now, all of them in the column. There may be a scroll bar to see all of them. They may not all show at one time. So make sure you got them all and use the scroll bar. Like you see the scroll bar up here. You can grab it and move it. There'll be one over here on the right side. So make sure you get them all. It's very important that you write down all these addresses because we're going to delete them. So once you have that all written down, come over to the side here on the left and hit this check mark. Now, if you hit the one up here, it'll check all the ones that are installed, or you can do them individually. It's up to you. But we're going to delete them all, so you might as well check the box on the top so they're all selected. Once you see them all selected, you're going to go down to delete. Yeah, ignore the beeping. That's from another machine. Okay, you're going to go down to delete. And you will see it is now deleted. Now, the reason you got to do this is because you're going to be modifying the cameras that you had installed with the correct address. So again, look at the addresses here, right? Well, if you don't have any, okay, let me back up a minute. If you don't have anything in this field, you're going to put device search. You're just going to click this box up here, and it'll fill in devices that are on your network already. Now, you would think you could just click a camera and say, oh yeah, click add. Well, a lot of times you can, but you're having a problem with your addressing right now because your modem was changed. So you're going to have to change some addresses change all the addresses slightly by 1 digit. So most of the time, people will have this type of address with the third field with the number 1. If you change to your modem, it may have turned to this field is 0. So the machine doesn't know where the cameras are because it's the wrong address. So you need to change it to the right address. So by clicking on one of these, like see this one, I've already changed the address from instead of 1 to a 0 before I started recording. So we're going to change another one so you can see how I did that. So now check the box here for the address that you want to change. Now this should match the ones that you wrote down. So the reason you're writing them down is because you want to make sure you're changing only the addresses to cameras that you have installed, because sometimes the machine can see other devices besides cameras and can make some confusion. So the ones that you have written down are the ones that you have to change. Okay, so I know this is definitely one of my cameras without looking at a list, but you look at your list, make sure that you're picking the right one to start with. And then you come down to where it says Modify IP. Click on Modify IP. You'll see a new screen. Okay, things to note on the screen is each camera has its own username and password. This is not the username and password of your NVR. Each camera has its own individual password and username. This is probably left at default for most people, but it can be changed to unique username and password for each one. But for the sake of simplicity, most people leave it as admin as default, which is usually admin blank or admin admin in both fields. So I would try leaving it blank at first. If the changes aren't successful, you come back again and do admin, or reach out to someone who may have the login information. Okay, so for now, we're leaving this, well, I can't leave this like this. So it's admin, and mine is SV. 72. And enter. Okay. So I got my login information for the camera in there, like I was saying. So now your camera say static too, which is good. Leave it. You want to leave it on static, or if it's not on static, put it on static. This way the address won't change. You don't want the address to change without you making the change, because if you put it on DHCP, it can change on its own, considering depending on what is happening on your network. So you don't want anything to change without you. So you're going to put it on static, and now we're going to manually make a change. Click on next to the number 1, and you're going to hit the back symbol here. This little keypad will show up, and then you're going to hit the back symbol, and the number should turn to 0. You can type in whatever you want in there, but when you hit the back button, it goes to 0, which is actually what we want for anybody who has the address of 0 on the third field, which I believe you do. Okay, which matches up to your new modem or gateway. So, see, gateway is 001. Okay, so that matches. This address has to match pretty much how this is written on your gateway. So that has to match up. The last number can be different, but the first numbers up to the third field need to match from IP address and gateway. The last numbers can be different and will be different. So your gateway usually ends with 1, and your camera address, like the list you wrote down, will have the same last numbers as you had before. You're only changing the third field to 0. So once you got that set, you're going to come down to save, and then you're going to see up here, it should have changed, and it didn't. So this camera may have a different address. I mean, a different login, like I was saying before. So let's do this to a different one. You get the general idea. Let's do this to a different one. Okay, starting from here, not all cameras can do this function. So we're going to pick this camera to change the IP address. Going to check the box here of the one you want to change, which this one I know can change its address. So I'm going to hit modify IP. The admin password, the password for this camera for me is admin. 72. Enter. And it's on static, which we want static. We want to come down to IP address, which is IP address of the camera, which we know 1 is not working, so we're going to switch this to 0. You hit the back button, it turns to 0. Click away, and then your gateway, if it's not changed already, which it probably is already, but if not, you can hit the back button, change that to 0, so that matches the same scheme setup of the camera. It's matching with the gateway. Whatever the gateway is what you have to match on the camera. So all 3 of these fields will be the same. Make sure they match. So if it's a 1, you're going to put a 1 up here. If it's a 0, down here, you're going to put a 0 up there. So 1 down here, you're going to put a 1 up there. So all these 3 fields match. The last one will be different. Most gateways end in a 1. So that all stays. So once you're done with that, you're going to hit save. As you can see up here, the address has changed from having a 1 in the third field to a 0, which is what you want. So you will do that to each camera that you have. If it lets you change the address and you have the proper login for each camera, you will be able to change these addresses to match your gateway. Once you've done that, you will be able to add the camera, which now that this has a checkbox, right, it's still checked, you can hit add, and it'll add it to your list down here of installed devices. This is red for me because the password is not the same for me. Yours is probably defaulted, so it'll turn green. When it's red, it means it's installed, but there is something wrong. So you can, after you install and after you add all the cameras that have been readdressed, add them one by one into this field, just like I did. And if necessary, you can hit modify, the modify symbol, the little pencil symbol, which is modify, and come in here and set up the password for the camera itself. Again, you'd have to set up the password. If it's defaulted, you're going to see an image anyway, and it's going to go green. So for me, it's I'd have to put in the username and password again, and my gateway is actually starting with 1, so it wouldn't work anyway. But you get the idea. So this address has to match your gateway. So usually people start out with the address of these 3 fields are all the same, and then the 3rd field flips to either a 1 or a 0. So you have to know what your gateway is. Or you could try one or the other, 1 or 2, or find out what your main gateway address looks like, and then make the change according to that. So we're gonna cancel this. So eventually you should see every one that was on your list that you wrote down in the beginning from up here with the wrong address. You change it to the right address, and then you're gonna checkbox all of them and add them to your machine. Once you add them to your machine, you should see the images start to populate. You should see them all popping in one at a time, with all green check marks for all green dots for status. If they are not green, you're able to go into modify and figure out what bit of information may not be correct and correct it. And it's usually just the username and password. If they're defaulted, like I was saying earlier, that it's probably just admin blank or admin admin. And then once you've changed that, hit apply and save. And then you should see whatever camera that you were working on. You should see in a minute or 2, sometimes it's not right away, these will turn from red to green. And you will also see wherever it is on the main screen, which you can see in the background here, you should see that camera, the image come on. And that should be all you have to do to recover your cameras after having a modem or router changed. And by doing that, sometimes your addressing of your network can change. So that's the main reason you're doing this, to have your cameras on the network with the proper addressing. So I hope this helps. Feel free to pause, rewind, go back, watch it again. And this is specifically for an Amcrest NVR. Not all NVRs are equal, and not every camera can be modified in this way. So if you know that you have the credentials correct, the password, username and password for the camera, and it doesn't change, that camera may not be able to be changed remotely through the NVR. So in that case, it would have to be, you'd have to log in directly to the camera. Most cameras have a web page access, and you'd have to log in that way and change the address that way, which was another video to explain that one. So hopefully what we showed you here today will hopefully work for you. I know specifically a few customers that I have that have this machine that this will work for them. So like I said, not all machines are equal, and this is specifically for Amcrest NVR and certain cameras. So hopefully you'll have good results. Thank you for watching.